Last week we brought you how much you could win in Sorare based on past projections and what we expect to go into next year. This week we have a little bit of a different thing. We have how much I actually won in Sorare. So these are actual real numbers that we're going to get to go over so you can see how close the projections are that I made to the actual real numbers that my team did. Additionally, we have some MLS news to go over. So we've got a start date for the season next year. We've got free agent lists that have just come out. So we are going to go over all of that next. Welcome into another video on the channel. This is Chris, the MLS Card Guy. Today, as I said, we're going over quite a few different things that are going to be jam-packed into the video. I am going to try to keep it pretty short because I am fighting a little bit of an illness, so I'm trying to fight through this so that you guys can get the information that you need, but this may not be quite as long of a video as I generally will make. So, first of all, we are going to get right into it. We're going to start with the 2022 season date that has been announced, a little bit of conference alignment, just some news and notes that might be interesting for you guys. So the season starts February 26th. So much earlier than it was this past season, even earlier than traditional MLS season starts. That's due to the World Cup that starts in November in Qatar. They want to have the season completely wrapped up by the beginning of November. So that is quite a good piece of information for us here. It means that we're not going to have to hold our cards for very long before they become useful again. Also, it means we could see a sharp rise in prices as we get closer to this February 26th date. Another thing that I wanted to highlight from this, everybody's playing 34 games. We're going to actually have 8 non-conference games now. So we are going to go back to East playing West and West playing East, something we haven't seen in a couple of years, which will be exciting to see. And then we're also going to have 5 or fewer midweek matches. 1 in May, 1 in June, 1 in July, and 2 in August that are not scheduled in consecutive weeks. So that is incredible information for us. It means we're probably going to see very little rotation next year. We are probably going to see starters start most games, which is awesome news for us. Lots less DNPs, hopefully, for next year. So just keep that in mind. When you're looking at players, you may be able to go for that little bit of an older player who sometimes gets rested, because he's going to get rested far less next season than he was this season, and a really jam-packed schedule. If your guy started 32, 33 games this year and only took a game or 2 off, he's probably going to start all 34 games next year. So really interesting information there. They won't schedule anything during the international window unless the team requests it. Conference alignment change. Nashville now moves to the West, so they're going to be playing different teams. Nashville now has a lot longer to travel, so just something to maybe keep in mind there. And then we also obviously will add Charlotte to the league next year. So we will be talking about the expansion draft for Charlotte coming up here. It's towards the end of December, I believe. I'll get you guys squared away on all of that, so don't worry about that. Not really anything that you have to pay attention to until it actually comes up. So yeah, that's conference alignment. That's the new schedule. Some really, really good news Sorare-wise. Should be a really fantastic season next year for us. The other thing that came out today is free agency options came out. So this is the first time they've actually published this list. But right here, you can see all of the players that have contracts expired in MLS and are eligible for free agency. So that means they are at least 24 years old and they've spent, I believe it's 5 years in the league. So all of these guys up here, the team has an option, so the team can choose to bring them back, or the team can say, nope, we're done with you, see you later. A lot of these guys probably do get brought back in. Looking at like Alex Ring should be brought back, Ben Sweat should be brought back. We already know Francisco Calvo is leaving. Kellen Acosta, I would assume he should be brought back, but the Rapids are kind of loaded in the midfield, so maybe they look to save a little salary on him. But yeah, you guys can see the list here. Nahar, he should definitely be brought back. So these are the guys with team options. Ryan Hollingshead's really, really good. They should be bringing him back. A couple of the Minnesota guys should be brought back. Nashville has a bunch as well. A bunch of guys that they actually might let go. So you can see a ton of teams have different impending free agents. And then these guys are completely out of contract. So they'd have to negotiate a brand new contract with the team in order to stay with the team. I would assume most of these guys end up moving to a different place. Maybe the exception, Yordi Reyna. He could be back with DC. We'll have to see how that shakes out. I wouldn't expect Breon or Seitz back. I just personally know DC United very well. Bornstein, Kappelhoff, and Shuttleworth Fire have announced they're just cleaning house. They're getting rid of everybody. So those 3 guys are all going to be moving. So generally with these free agents, they typically will stay within MLS. One thing to note here is Steve Clark. So interesting with the goalkeeper situation in Portland. If he does not re-up, he is 35 years old. If he does not re-up with Portland, that could open up a little bit of a spot there. So just something to keep in mind. I'm going to actually link this page in the description of the video so that you guys can take a look for yourselves. And then we'll get into the second half of the video, so ETH grinding for 2021. So we had a small budget team, a medium budget team, and a big budget team. And as you can see, the medium budget team, we were projected to win 0.4 ETH from the medium budget team. So that was a price of a team of 1,000. Total winnings was 1838.54 in terms of ETH. And oddly, I would consider my team to have been a medium budget team. Not necessarily for what I paid for it, because prices were a lot more expensive in the preseason last year. But from the types of players that I had, I didn't necessarily have all-stars, but I also wasn't scraping the bottom of the barrel to try to find players. So I would say I was aggressively medium as far as my budget goes. And you guys will have to excuse me, I'm a little choked up here with everything, so still trying to get over a little bit of a cold, so I'm trying to push through for you guys. So this is my team that I actually used from this past season, 2021. I went through every single game week, figured out what I won. I did win a few cards in here. These are not all necessarily cards that I won in Global All-Star 4, so some of these you can kind of disregard a little bit. But for the full season, we actually won exactly the amount that we projected a medium budget team would have won last year, which was 0.4 ETH. We did win 10 cards in total, which was another 0.18 ETH. So in total, we won 0.58 ETH for the entire season. So a little over half an ETH. Really, really good. If we'd been a little bit more efficient as far as our buying habits of players, would have been a really, really profitable season for us. And I think a lot of that just has to do with learning the game, figuring out, which players are good, what we're looking for. I personally thought I would have done a lot better in the second half of the season as opposed to the first half. You can see how poorly we started. This teams that I submitted here were really not good. They were low budget teams for sure. In some cases, they wouldn't have even hit a low budget mark. I started some guys that weren't even starters, just were like super sub type players, which I would never ever recommend doing on any level of Sorare. Don't start super subs. One of the basic things that you have to have for an ETH grind team is they have to start every single game. You can find guys that start every game for whatever budget you're looking for if you look hard enough for it. So I assumed that this period right here would really weigh me down for the first half of the season. But as it turns out, we did a little bit better in the second half, but really not that much better. We had a really good run right in here where we hit a whole bunch of stuff. And then the halfway point, I believe, is here. So we hit a whole bunch of stuff towards the later half of the first half of the season. So like kind of in the middle. And then you can see all of the percentages here. So we actually hit a threshold 60% of the time. And that was consistent in the first half and the second half. The difference where we made up a little bit of ETH was we hit the upper threshold a little bit more often in the second half, which does make sense. They get a little bit more comfortable with which players were which players were going to start consistently, and I did start to get a little bit better quality player. So hitting that upper threshold, 36.36% of the time, I think moving forward, that's a pretty good projection as to what we can actually do with a mid-budget team, hitting it a little over a third of the time. So you're definitely going to be making back money on that one. So it's not going to be a super long video here. Again, I am kind of fighting a little bit as far as the sickness. I'm quite wiped out. But I wanted to get this out to you guys so that you guys could see exactly how we did this season. You can kind of compare that to the projections. The projections that I made actually turned out to be pretty accurate for what we did during this particular season. So hopefully we can get a little bit better, a little bit more efficient next season as we start to figure out the game a little bit more. But that's kind of what you can project as far as your team and what kind of team that you could look for. So again, we're not going to keep this here too long. I am going to go and get some rest now. I appreciate you guys following everything. Please let me know if there's anything that you would like to see in a future video. But until the next time, Vamos United.